with you. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow.
What it do, nephew? It's your Uncle Lou. And I'm coming at you with something that I think we about to do. Now, we looked at a couple of heists. This one's by the channel Fern again. This one is the biggest fraud on TV. Not gonna waste no more time. Just gonna hop right into it.
It's September 9th, 2001. British host Chris Tarrant welcomes 8 contestants to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. They're all eager to get rich, but to sit on the hot seat, you have to win fastest finger first.
Put these words in the order they occur in the title of the Agatha Christie thriller. Nile on Death
The correct answer is Death on the Nile.
All these were correct. Most of them, nearly all of them. Who was fastest? Charles Ingram in 3.97. That's so fast.
Major Charles Ingram has been a contestant twice before. Now he finally gets his chance.
British, sure.
Confidently, he takes his place. But this confidence doesn't last long. Ingram is often unsure of his answers. After just 7 out of 15 questions, he merely has 1 of his 3 jokers left. But somehow he manages to answer correctly again and again. And then the time has come. Just 1 more correct answer separates him from £1 million.
A number 1, followed by 100 zeros, is known by what name?
Shit. Hey, call me a dumbass. A number 1 followed by 100 zeros. Holy shit. A Google. A
Megatron. Gigabit. Nanomole.
I don't think I've heard
Process of elimination.
But
I think it's
seconds
not
later,
a
even
not
though
a nominal.
he never heard of a Google, he completely changes his guess.
I really do think it's a Google.
The tension in the studio is almost unbearable.
You just won $1 million!
Only 2 people managed to achieve that before him. An incredible run against all odds.
That's
Maybe
crazy.
Too incredible. In fact, Major Charles Ingram cheated. He is quite possibly the biggest fraud who has ever been on television. He and his accomplices have been tried and convicted. Their heist has been publicized and fictionalized. Yet, to this day, they maintain their innocence.
We didn't do it. We really didn't cheat.
20 years later, there are still a lot of open questions. And behind Ingram's case lurks an even weirder story. One of an underground organization that systematically exploited the show for years. How did they do it?
How did they? Dang, how do you cheat on a show like this? Aren't the answers like, you don't have the answers, so. But he said accomplices.
While
so.
Ingram is celebrating his victory in front of the camera,
Inside
there's
job?
turmoil behind the scenes. The showrunners are sussed out. A sound technician already called their CEO Paul Smith, while Ingram was still answering questions. Smith told him to keep the show going. Ingram receives a check with his winnings from Tarrant. But the check is retained by Celador, the company behind the show, for 8 days for processing. In the meantime, Smith and the technicians look back at their material. Ingram often seemed to have no clue, really. How did this guy, after being left with 1 joker at £4,000, snatch $1 million? The probability of just guessing a 1 in 4 7 times in a row plus a 1 in 2 is 0.003%.
Fuck, man, I'm not in class right now. Shit.
No way, right? They look at his
It's late at night. I'm not here for the
thinking about his
numbers like
answers.
this.
Craig David, I just can't. I don't think I've never heard of Craig David, to be honest.
There's something interesting happening here. No matter the question, Ingram goes through all 4 possible answers, often chronologically, repeatedly.
Emmental is a cheese from which country?
It could be France, I suppose. Then again, it could be Italy, so. Or maybe it's the Netherlands.
Right. Yes. That's sort of how the question works, Charles.
No, I got it.
That in itself might still be quite normal behavior. It seems fairly rational to go one by one if you're not sure. But then,
Who was the second husband of Jacqueline Kennedy? Adnan Khashoggi, Ronald Reagan, Aristotle Onassis, Rupert Murdoch.
Okay.
Guys,
not
you really
certain.
got to pay attention to school, man. Because you never know when you're going to want to be a millionaire.
I would have thought that it would be Aristotle Onassis.
Why?
wait, someone coughed just now at the correct option.
Aristotle Onassis.
Aristotle Onassis was indeed married to Kennedy. Huh. And then it happens again.
But the reason I think it's cricket is because
And again.
I think it was Holbein.
The studio obviously has cameras and mics for the candidate and the show host, but it also has cameras and mics pointed at the audience for reaction shots. The technicians start looking at what's happening in the crowd while Ingram is reading out the options. Who is coughing? And always at the right time.
Which American platform was founded in 2012 and is known for its creative and interactive online lessons? A. Biscuit. B. Bilingual. C. Bicycle. D. Brilliant.
Biscuit.
You already know it. Brilliant is a
wrong
great
as
way to
fuck.
learn new skills across a variety of subjects like math, programming, and artificial intelligence.
No offense. We didn't come here for this.
The UK at the time. The show was just 4 years old, and at its height about 19 million people tuned in, a third of the entire population. People were obsessed with it.
Damn.
That was also the case with Charles Ingram and his wife Diana. Her brother Adrian Pollock had been on the show 4 times before, on the hot seat once, and won £32,000. A few months later, she managed to get on the hot seat and won £32,000 as well.
So I remember talking to her in the bar afterwards, and I said, "Great, congratulations." She said, "Only 32." And I said to her, "It's a huge amount of money." She went, "Yes, but I should have done more. I should have beaten my brother and all this."
Mind you, it is incredibly difficult to get a spot on this show. Thousands, if not millions of people try. The selection process is brutal. But this family managed to get in over
3
and
times?
over again.
4 times?
They knew the system inside out and how to play it. Adrian even had a mock-up fastest finger first console at home. He and Diana wanted to publish a book with tips on how to get on the show. But as it turns out, they were not the only ones who knew the system. And some were a lot better at exploiting it. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is not broadcast live and has a set runtime. So when Charles finally gets his shot, filming stops for the day after the £4,000 question.
And I remember us saying, "God, that poor bloody Major, you know, he's got as much chance of getting the 32,000, you know, as going to the moon in a rocket." I mean, there was just no way this guy could possibly go much further.
Ambitious Diana is frustrated with Charles. That would make sense, because Charles is a smart man. He holds university degrees in engineering and management and will later be accepted by Mensa. That evening, as the couple is on their way home on the M4, their frustrations likely intensify as they dwell on the opportunity for immense wealth slipping away right from under their grasp. They will not let that happen. Diana and Charles call Tequin Wittock. He's a Welsh college lecturer and fellow game show enthusiast. Adrian and Diana have been training Tequin and helping him to get on the show. He's supposed to be a candidate tomorrow, so he will be in the studio. Charles, Diana, and Tequin.
I just had a thought. Can you imagine, like, you doing something and it, like, being broken down? Like, you come up with a plan to do something and it just gets broken down over and over online.
Are on the phone for
Dissected,
5 minutes. They
piece by
supposedly
piece.
devise a very simple, yet effective
crazy,
plan.
dog.
Charles reads out the answers. Whoever knows the answer coughs when it comes up.
Have you got a strategy?
Well, I have actually. I have got a strategy. I was a bit defensive on the last show. You know, I sort of started talking myself out of answers that, frankly, I should have known and did know. So this time I'm going on the counterattack.
This counterattack obviously works. Though he repeatedly says he has no idea or never heard of certain options, he goes on to 180 pivot seconds later.
Craig David, I just can't. I don't think I've never heard of Craig David, to be honest. I've just never heard of Craig David, so. No, I'll go Craig David. Yeah.
You just won £32,000.
I don't think it's Paris. I think it's Berlin. I'm going to go for Paris.
You thought it was Berlin. You changed your mind to Paris. That brought you 500,000.
I don't think I've heard of a Google. I don't actually know what a Google is, but I really do think it's a Google.
You just won 1 million!
Back behind the scenes, a total of 192 coughs have been recorded by the microphones in the studio.
Think about it. That's what I'm talking
about. A lot of them
about.
when a correct answer was mentioned.
Think
Paul
about
Smith
that.
is confident this can't be a coincidence and calls the police. Later,
That's exactly why I don't like coughing when I need to. Like, and it's like, dude, I keep it to like a 3-4 cough minimum.
he makes another call.
If not, everybody's gonna look at you crazy.
We didn't meet. I am the managing director of Celador.
Right.
I think I should just get straight to the point.
Yep.
And effectively say what is a pre-prepared statement here. I have to tell you that we have suspicions from viewing the recording of last Monday's program and subsequently studying the tapes carefully that there were irregularities during the taping of the show in which you participated.
Oh, good Lord, no.
Because of that, I have to tell you that these suspicions have been referred to the police.
Right.
Damn.
Thus, we, for not for the moment, will be airing the program or indeed authorizing payment of the check.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I completely refute that, obviously. Good Lord, I'm absolutely gobsmacked. All right, well, thanks for letting me know.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, bye.
1.5
that was a
years
real
later,
call?
the case went to trial. It quickly turned into a tabloid frenzy. The story of major fraud was just too sensational. In the end, all 3 defendants were found guilty. 2 documentaries were made. The Ingrams never accepted the verdict.
We didn't cheat on that show. There was no plan to cheat on that show. I won that money perfectly honestly and fairly and squarely, and while I was sitting there in the centre of the studio, I did not notice any coughing at all. I was entirely unaware of it. As for the victims, I've heard a lot of people say that this is a victimless crime. Well, actually, there are victims. The 3 defendants were the victims. We should not have been found guilty on the evidence that was presented in court. We were found guilty on a very good story.
Why did you cough then, Diana? I think I needed to clear my throat.
The coughs were just coincidental, according to them. Wittock suffered from a persistent cough all his life. The coughing footage presented in the court had been edited by Celador to accentuate the coughs. Also, why would 3 intelligent people not come up with a smarter way to cheat? At least code the coughs. If the answer is C, cough on D, and so on. Wittock, who supposedly coughed 19 times to hint at the correct answers, flopped when he was in the hot seat. Why was he so all-knowing when supposedly helping Charles? And why would he join such a scheme? How could he have made sure he actually got his share of the money? And perhaps most importantly, was coughing in the audience even audible on stage?
People cough like mad. Everybody's coughing in a studio because they're sort of enclosed or whatever. I had no idea. There was so much noise in the studio that night. It was like a madhouse. People were screaming, they were cheering.
Bruce Wayne's
The 2014
butler.
book Bad Show casts a lot of doubts on the trial. Similarly did the show Quiz. But, playing the devil's advocate, wouldn't Wittock's chronic illness also be a brilliant cover? If he was just a man who coughed constantly, who would suspect these coughs to be hints?
That's what I'm
Simple,
saying.
yes, but also brilliantly hiding in plain sight. More generally, how likely is it that 19 significant coughs
The reason I think
are just a coincidence? Liam Shaw made a fascinating statistical analysis to answer this very question.
And I remembered the case from when I was a child, and I was very interested in the statistics of the unlikeliness of the coughing coming after the correct answers. So I wanted to investigate that for myself, and so I just attempted to do that because it was lockdown and I couldn't leave the house. So I found a way to entertain myself, basically.
The chance
Oh,
for
but
Wittock's
why you don't
19
get no
coughs
sleep?
to be coincidental within the time frame the show was filmed is incredibly low, if these were his only coughs.
And say that half of all of those 192 coughs were Tecwyn Wittock, then in the statistical trials that I ran, I found that the probability of getting at least 19 coughs would be about 8%.
This ignores the fact that Diana likely too coughed at significant moments.
192,
The analysis
bruh.
I did was just for fun and it's quite silly, but what it convinced me of is that there's no real dispute about the fact that there is some sort of association between coughs and correct answers.
Looking at Shaw's math, the coughs were probably not random. But this clearly was a case of trial by media. According to the New York Times, the actual trial should have been a lot more extensive and critical. They are not sure if there would have been enough evidence to prove guilt. And just as the Ingrams were in the spotlight, another group quietly gamed the show for years. Paddy Spooner was the first person to appear on multiple versions of the show. He won $250,000 in Australia, £250,000 in the UK, and €1,000 in Ireland. He knew how to get on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and made no secret of it.
Well, in England, 7 million people phone in. I worked out the population's a lot smaller, and given that most people wait until they've watched the programme before phoning in, so I made my calls in one evening.
215 in one evening?
Yeah, I'm a pretty boring bloke.
His runs were ice cold, focused, with confident, decisive answers.
The last convicts transported from Britain arrived in Fremantle in which year?
1868.
A. 1848. B. 1858. C. 1868. D. 1878.
I'll play.
That's crazy. Bro, he answered before the dude even got all of them out.
He had to go before he even came up, didn't he? All right, let's lock it in.
Damn, you never cheated on a test in school, huh?
Paddy, you won $250,000.
You gotta play it off.
He dropped out of college and lived off of pub quizzes before going professional. After bombing on the Irish version, Spooner met Keith Burgess. Burgess had helped people to get on the show for a fee. They teamed up to take that business to the next level. Burgess and Spooner built an underground syndicate called the Consortium. They provided a service to reliably get people on the show and to maximize their winnings.
Wow. Whoa. Now that's some FBI need involvement right there. You basically made a whole business out
Step
of getting
1,
people
get
in.
the call. They would spend thousands of pounds and a lot of hours dialing the show's premium rate registration lines. Once through, they played recordings of their clients leaving messages with their name and number. Step 2, stall. Once the client got a call back from the show producers, they would answer that he or she wasn't home at the moment. A member of the consortium would then race to the client's home to help with step 3, get close. Potential contestants had to answer a closest to question on the phone. Say, how tall is Big Ben? 96 meters is correct, but 93 or 100 will do. Spooner figured out that these questions were always pulled from the Office for National Statistics database and that they were asked in rotation. Step 4. Make fingers fast. Reminiscent of the Ingrams, consortium clients would practice on modeled buzzers. Step 5. Fake a friend. Okay, this is for sure the craziest part. Once a client was on the hot seat and used the phone a friend joker, the consortium would reroute this call to a safe house. A neutral person called The Voice would pick up on a phone with a silent mute button. In the room, loads of facts laid out on the floor. Paddy, Keith, a guy named John, a pop culture expert, Poppy,
that's
a computer
crazy.
with Google
This is
open,
like some
and
Ocean's
Crack the Bricky,
11 shit.
whoever that was. The consortium secured 200 spots on the show from 2002 to 2007.
What?
55 clients made it to the hot seat, winning £4.2 million. That's 26% of all the money won on the show during that period.
Wow.
They only stopped because the producers didn't give people second chances anymore if they weren't home, so step 2 fell apart. 25% of the winnings went to Keith Burgess and Paddy Spooner. They published a book about their operation in 2021. None of what they did was illegal. It had no consequences for them.
Really?
Spooner even met Paul Smith in 2020, explaining to him how they did it.
That's interesting as hell.
Back
that was
in 2003,
video.
while the consortium collected cash, the lives of Charles, Diana, and Tagwin were destroyed. The Ingrams faced constant harassment and humiliation in public. Their cat was shot dead with an air gun. They had bags of vomit thrown at their home, windows broken.
What the
Their
hell?
3 daughters have been bullied at school. Charles resigned from the army. The family went bankrupt. Whittock resigned from his lecturer's job. And perhaps most absurd of all, he had to trademark his name to stop a company from naming cough medicine after him.
What? Imagine that. I don't even know if that's the worst part, nephew, but shout out to Fern, man. They always coming out with these nice animations, man. The animation storytelling is always on point. This one was titled "The Biggest Fraud on TV." Great storytelling. I had no idea they could go about faking this stuff. Excuse me, I'm sorry. That they can go about faking stuff like that to try and get on the show. You know what I'm saying? Trying to disguise your cops and doing all that stuff. I would have never decided to do something like that. But at the same time, when you got $1 million on the line in the early 2000s, it's a lot of junk on the line. Early 2000s or late 90s, so it's a lot on the line. Nephew, I appreciate you stopping by with your Uncle Lou on another one. You know I'm gonna be at, and I know you're gonna be right back here in the next one. But if you're not, it's just because you're not subscribed. Go ahead, click that little button right here to the left, to the left. Well, it's to my left, you're right. Go ahead, click that little button so you can subscribe, make it easier to come back here. Share with somebody, put them on. You know what I'm saying? We close to 300. Chief Keef, Sosa, bang, bang. We close. Let's keep it going, nephew. You know I'm going to be at. Peace. Catch you in the next one.